Imagine you're pitching a sitcom built around a generation gap. On one side, you have the parents, former hippies, devoted liberals, idealists who spent their 1960s marching in protests, championing social causes, and serving in the Peace Corps. Naturally, you'd expect their children to be even more rebellious, pushing their parents' values to the next level. But this is 1982. America is entering the age of Reaganomics, big business, and a renewed faith in free markets. So instead of raising a tie-dye wearing activist, these parents find themselves raising a teenager who carries a briefcase, reads the Wall Street Journal before bed, and keeps a framed photo of Richard Nixon on his nightstand. That brilliantly inverted premise became the foundation of Family Ties. Over 7 seasons and 176 episodes, the NBC hit did more than make audiences laugh. It captured the political, cultural, and generational tensions that define 1980s America. But the story behind the show is just as fascinating as anything that happened in the Keaton living room. From a script that struggled to find a home, to a series that would eventually draw more than 40 million viewers each week, Family Ties is a story filled with surprising casting what-ifs, unexpected superstardom, and a cultural shift that even its creators didn't fully anticipate. So sit back, relax, and join me for a trip to Columbus, Ohio. Today, we're exploring the complete story of Family Ties, how it was created, why it became a phenomenon, and the legacy it left behind. Our story begins with a writer named Gary David Goldberg. In the early 1980s, Goldberg found inspiration in his own home life. He was raising a family in a country that seemed to be shifting into a more conservative direction. Drawing heavily from his own experiences, he wrote a pilot centered on 2 former 1960s activists, Elise and Stephen Keaton, now navigating parenthood in a very different America. Goldberg first took the script to CBS. The network passed, reportedly feeling that a show about ex-hippies was a relic of another era. NBC, however, saw potential. The network cast Michael Gross and Meredith Baxter Birney as Stephen and Elise, and from the beginning, they were intended to be the heart of the series. Family Ties was conceived as a story about parents trying to understand a changing world through the lens of their children. But then, an unexpected young actor walked into the audition room and changed everything. NBC executives weren't immediately sold on him. In fact, some worried he was too small, too young looking, and lacked that traditional leading man presence they thought the role required. Yet, Gary David Goldberg saw something different. That actor was a 21-year-old Canadian named Michael J. Fox, and the character he was auditioning for, Alex P. Keaton, would soon become one of the most iconic television characters of the 1980s. Now, here's one of the great what-if stories in television history. Brandon Tartikoff, the legendary president of NBC, actually liked Michael J. Fox. He saw the talent, but he wasn't completely convinced. According to television lore, Tartikoff turned to the casting director and said, "He's smart, he's talented, but I just don't know. Is his face the kind of face you see on a lunchbox?" Fortunately for Family Ties, Gary David Goldberg stood his ground. He believed Fox was perfect for Alex P. Keaton and fought to keep him in the role, a decision that would prove to be one of the smartest casting choices in sitcom history. And then came the perfect punchline. Just a few years later, Back to the Future turned Michael J. Fox into one of the biggest stars on the planet. To celebrate the irony, Fox had a custom lunchbox made with his own face on it and sent directly to Tartikoff. Inside was a note that read, "To Brandon, this is for you to keep your crow in. Love and kisses, Michael J. Fox." Tartikoff reportedly loved the joke and kept the lunchbox in his office for years, a daily reminder that sometimes the biggest stars don't look like stars until they're given the chance to shine. Now let's set the scene. It's September 22nd, 1982. Abracadabra by the Steve Miller Band is sitting at #1 on the Billboard charts. A little movie about a homesick alien with a taste for Reese's Pieces is dominating the box office. And on NBC, a brand new sitcom called Family Ties is making its quiet debut. The network executives thought they knew exactly what they had. The series was supposed to be warm, topical comedy about two former hippies, Stephen and Elise, trying to navigate a rapidly changing America while raising their family. But almost immediately, something unexpected happened. Viewers weren't tuning in for the parents. They were tuning in for Alex. And that brings us to one of the most fascinating twists in television history. Gary David Goldberg never intended Alex P. Keaton to be the hero of Family Ties. Quite the opposite. Goldberg, a lifelong liberal, created Alex as a satirical reflection of the emerging 1980s culture of ambition, wealth, and corporate success. The idea was that the audience would look at this briefcase-carrying, stock-quoting teenager and see the absurdity of his values. Instead, America fell in love with him. Young viewers didn't see Alex as a warning. They saw him as aspirational. Suddenly, reading financial papers, negotiating every situation like a business deal, and wearing sweater vests looked surprisingly cool. A huge part of that transformation came down to Michael J. Fox. On paper, Alex could have been insufferable. In Fox's hands, he became irresistible. He brought an infectious energy to the role, combining razor-sharp comedic timing with genuine vulnerability and charm. Even when Alex was being selfish, arrogant, or completely ridiculous, there was always enough heart underneath to keep audiences on his side. The response was impossible to ignore. Almost overnight, the writers realized they needed to adjust course. The show's center of gravity shifted, and Family Ties gradually evolved into what many viewers jokingly called the Alex P. Keaton Show. But Alex's success wasn't just about Michael J. Fox. He was surrounded by a cast that could match him punch for punch. There was Mallory, played by Justine Bateman, whose fashion-forward confidence and delightfully superficial worldview made her the perfect foil for Alex's intellectual snobbery. Their constant battles produced some of the show's funniest moments. And then there was Jennifer, played by Tina Yothers. As the youngest Keaton sibling, Jennifer often served as the family's voice of reason, armed with a sharp wit and a perfectly delivered deadpanned observations that could cut through any argument. Together, Alex, Mallory, and Jennifer formed one of television's most memorable sibling dynamics. Their chemistry elevated Family Ties beyond its original political premise and turned it into something far more enduring, a funny, believable portrait of a family that loved each other despite seeing the world in completely different ways. By 1985, Family Ties wasn't just a hit, it had become one of the biggest shows on television. But behind the scenes, fate was about to hand its young star an opportunity that would change his life forever. Across the Universal Studios lot, director Robert Zemeckis was struggling with a science fiction comedy called Back to the Future. The film had already been shooting for weeks with actor Eric Stoltz in the lead for Marty McFly. Stoltz was talented, but something wasn't clicking. The movie needed a spark, a frantic, youthful energy that simply wasn't there. Zemeckis knew exactly who he wanted: Michael J. Fox. There was just one problem. Fox was already committed to Family Ties. When Zemeckis approached series creator Gary David Goldberg, Goldberg agreed to help, but only under one strict condition: Family Ties came first. Fox couldn't miss rehearsals, table reads, or tapings. If he wanted to make the movie, he'd have to do both jobs at once. What followed became the stuff of Hollywood legend. For months, Fox essentially lived two separate lives. Each morning, he'd arrive at the Family Ties set and spend the day playing Alex P. Keaton. Then, as soon as filming wrapped, he'd race across Los Angeles to the Universal lot, slip into Marty McFly's red vest, and work deep into the night. Many days ended at 2, 3 in the morning. A few hours later, the cycle would begin again. By day, he was a fast-talking young Republican from Columbus, Ohio. By night, he was a time-traveling teenager trying to get back to 1985. The schedule was so grueling that Fox later admitted there were moments where he barely knew which character he was supposed to be playing. But the gamble paid off beyond anyone's wildest expectations. In the summer of 1985, Back to the Future became a worldwide phenomenon. At the same time, Family Ties continued dominating network television. For a remarkable stretch, Michael J. Fox starred in the #1 movie in America while appearing on one of the highest-rated shows on television. He wasn't just a sitcom star anymore, he was a bona fide superstar. As the years rolled on, Family Ties accomplished something rare for a long-running sitcom. It evolved without losing its heart. Viewers watched the Keaton children grow up in real time, and the stories matured right alongside them. The show also changed the lives of the people making it. During the 4th season, the writers introduced Ellen Reed, an intelligent, independent college student who quickly became Alex's most significant romantic relationship. The role went to a young actress named Tracy Pollan. The chemistry between Alex and Ellen was undeniable. What audiences didn't know was that chemistry extended far beyond the script. While working together, Michael J. Fox and Tracy Pollan fell in love. They married in 1988, just 1 year before the series ended. And decades later, their relationship remains one of Hollywood's most enduring success stories. By 1989, however, the world that had inspired Family Ties was beginning to change. The Reagan era was winding down. The decade that had shaped Alex P. Keaton was coming to a close. And within the story itself, the Keaton children were no longer children. They were ready to leave home. For Alex, that meant accepting his dream job on Wall Street and preparing to leave Columbus for New York City. The series finale aired on May 14, 1989. Unlike many sitcom finales that relied on gimmicks or last-minute twists, Family Ties stayed true to itself. There were no shocking revelations, no elaborate stunts, no dramatic cliffhangers. Just a family facing one of life's most universal moments, saying goodbye. The final scenes unfolded quietly in the Keaton living room as Alex prepared to begin the next chapter of his life. The debate, the jokes, and the sibling rivalries faded into the background, replaced by something deeper. The realization that his family was changing forever. It was simple, it was honest, and it was incredibly moving. More than 36 million viewers tuned in to watch the Keatons share one final embrace. After 7 seasons and 176 episodes, they no longer felt like television characters. They felt like family. At the end of the day, Family Ties resonated because beneath the spirited dinner table debates and the seemingly endless generational clashes, the love between its characters was never in question. The series reminded us that no matter how differently we see the world from our parents, our children, or our siblings, family remains the constant that keeps us grounded. Week after week, it showed that you can passionately disagree with the people under your roof and still love them deeply. Thanks for joining me on this trip back to Columbus, Ohio, and into the heart of one of television's most beloved families. If you enjoyed this look back at Family Ties, be sure to follow the podcast and leave us a review. It really helps others discover the show. Until next time, keep your ties close, your family closer, and as Alex P. Keaton would probably remind us, always count your change. I'm Moonlight Peterson, and we'll see you next time on Bite Size Nostalgia.